Start with the first question. Let's talk about any new additional evacuations based on today's eruption that was obviously, by all accounts, particularly spectacular, but I guess we'll get to that from the science side of things.
Well, we did have one vent open up this morning, and that area, which is, for lack of a better description, it's about a mile from northeast of Puna Geothermal. That had to be evacuated probably around 6 a.m. this morning. Fortunately, as far as we can tell, the two homes that were on that road weren't home, and so that was good. There was other people in the area from an adjacent property in that area, and those homes turned out to be uprift or up from the fissure, so they're okay, but some other structure within the fields got burned and taken out, and so we're up to, I think, 37 structures at this point.
Can I ask you to elaborate a little bit? Yesterday you put out a call to everybody who owns Airbnbs or those kind of transient vacation type units. We understand the call. What about the enforcement side of that, being able to get down there, or is there really only so much you can do with the abundance of places that are down there?
Sure. Along with the declaration signed by the governor, that gives us, under the law for managing emergency management, it allows us to make this kind of order, basically. And so we're asking for the owners of these bed and breakfasts or Airbnbs to, support what we're asking. The water system down there is taxed already. The water line that feeds that area runs along that Pohiki Road. It was taken out once, and they reconnected it, so it's supplying that area. But we understand there's a large number of vacation rentals in that area, so asking the support of those folks to somehow, cancel reservations or accommodate these people. Also recognizing that these people would be newcomers to the area, not knowing the idiosyncrasies of the roadways, as roadways get cut off, thinking that they might not know their way out, and dealing with volcanoes, that would probably be the best situation for everybody around if perhaps go to Kona or something.
Is there any enforcement authorities that you have? Do you even have the personnel to be able to enforce? Are there any legal penalties that owners or people can face?
Right, we don't want to get to that level. We do have, everybody's pretty much strapped, trying to, take care of any evacuation needs and kind of controlling that area. So we don't want to get to that point. We've talked to Corp Council to make sure we do have the authority to enforce this. At this time, we're not going into those areas to check door to door, sure, see what kind of capacity or what kind of percentage of folks are visitors renting these vacation rentals. So we're just kind of working the immediate need as far as evacuating folks that are threatened close by.
Do you have an accurate count on how many new residences or residents are affected by the latest evacuation order?
2. That's what we thought, maybe as much as 20 this morning, but looks like on that road there's 2 residents.
Yeah, police had less than 10. But 2 would be less than 10, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, the evacuations are still voluntary from Kapoa to Kalapana. Have you seen a large influx of people from those areas that are voluntarily evacuating at this point and heading to the shelters?
I think the shelters, it must be, because the shelters are getting higher numbers. And I know, just from the folks I know in that area that have kids, they have jobs in town, so they would be commuting every day. They've kind of packed up and found other accommodations.
Are the shelters near capacity at this point, or are there plans for additional shelters if needed?
We've got plans for additional shelters. KL has picked up a few people. People kind of bumped over from Pahoa to KL, and so the numbers are up. So we've got other plans.
Could you share the numbers right now for the 2 shelters?
300.
So we've got 300 at 300 total at both shelters.
Do you have the breakup?
No, I don't have the breakup.
What is the capacity for those 2 shelters?
Good question.
Oh, okay. And do you have evacuations at Four Corners area? Are you asking people to, stressing that they evacuate? What's happening over there?
That area is still just voluntary evacuation.
Can you describe how close the Fisher 17 is to 132?
Well, to 132, you know, it's fairly, I guess, fairly close. Probably, I think half a mile, maybe within half a mile. But the flow is in the opposite direction or parallel to it. So in that close proximity, it's not a threat.
Are you concerned right now that the Fisher could cut off that route?
That's always a possibility, but that linear pattern that this activity has taken kind of just keeps it alongside the 132. Maybe down further, a couple miles down further, would it come closer to 132.
And if it cuts off 137, actually, sorry, do you have those other roads that you're working on? Are they almost ready to open? You think you had 130 that you're gonna lay stuff over the cracks?
Still working on it.
And
We're still in discussion with the state and actually FEMA to see what we can do for 130 to get that opened up.
Cool.
Talmadge, anything new with Puna geothermal venture?
Pentane is gone and just working to cool the well fields.
Capping wells, anything like that?
No.
I heard someone use the word kill the well. What does that mean?
That means to, I guess, make them cold, like eliminate the pressure in them. Yeah.
Yesterday, the term 2 active wells was still being used. I thought none of the wells were active at this point. Is that a distinction, that none of the wells are maybe producing for online, but are still active? Is there?
That's my understanding, that there's no production going on. They are production wells that are still pressured.
That's what you mean by active? They still have?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
are you still stressing to all the residents in Lower Puna that they should be planning to evacuate or making self-evacuations at this point? Has anything changed?
No, absolutely. They should be making preparations, you know, even though not all of them are going to be under the threat of inundation, they are facing the threat of isolation if the roadways are taken out. So they got to consider that.
And a couple of days ago, you said estimated 2,000 people might be in that area that could be isolated. Do you
Yes.
think that's gotten less? Because
You know, with the word and what I've heard, it should be down. I'm not exactly sure. You know, we've got teams that are going out there and making contact with all the communities along the roadways and the subdivisions, and you know, the word should be out with all the messaging that we're doing and the I guess door-to-door contacts. So we're trying to do all that we can and make sure people are prepared so that if they do get isolated, that's the choice that they've made.
And one last follow-up to that is 137 is an outlet. If 132 gets damaged, they could take 137. Is that possible or not?
Well, yeah, 137 leads to Government Beach Road, goes through Wawa, and then hooks up with Kahakai in Hawaiian Beaches, and then actually would continue to Maku in Paradise Park.
So that could be an option.
Yes.
And then you're worried that the lava the fissures might actually damage that part too?
Yeah, you know, if it takes out all the roadways, then, you know,
And then they would be isolated.
yes.
And any update on air quality issues and which areas are most impacted by SO2 today? I know we're back to having some trades, I believe, so I assume that helps, but any update on areas that are most at risk currently?
Well, you know, depending on what the winds are doing, trades are back, so kind of blows it towards the, you know, from the northeast, and it blows it into the direction, you know, the lower Puna area. And so some communities have been reporting high SO2 like at the evening when the winds kind of switch around. And so we're kind of dealing with that, working with the State Department of Health as far as levels and making sure that people are doing the appropriate thing, whether they fall within the vulnerable population of elderly, maybe they're really young, or pre-existing respiratory issues, to get out of the area. Otherwise, they can shelter in place if they got a house they can pretty much lock up.
Can you share a little bit? Let's transition up to Halema'uma'u, and what can you tell us in terms of the lowering of the lava lake and the possibility of it meeting the groundwater?
Okay. Well, as we've been saying for a few days now, there is that concern because the lava lake now has dropped completely out of view. So we are unable to get an exact measure of where lava might be. We're using the deformation of the summit, the deflation of the summit, as a proxy for how much that lava continues to drain away from the summit. So there is still the concern that if the lava lake drains below the water table, that groundwater can seep into the hot rocks left behind. Now, if the conduit remains open, it's not too much of a problem because the steam that's generated from the interaction of hot rock and water can just passively rise up through the conduit. But we've been seeing these rock falls in that conduit. They're ongoing, and should rocks fall into the conduit and form a plug effectively, then the steam that's building can become pressurized, and then if it's pressurized enough to blast through that plug, that's the concern that we're considering. And it's a possibility. It's not 100% certainty, but it's certainly a possibility, and so that's why we're erring on the side of caution and trying to keep everybody aware and to be prepared.
The park has been closed since Friday. I know that that's the National Park's call, but they make that call based on your science.
Right.
So based on your science, the expectation is the park will remain closed indefinitely?
Well, again, that's a park call, but right now this is still a possibility, and how long that may be. In 1924, it took some days to weeks before the explosions took place. So it could be a while longer. We had the model, some of you have seen the modeling that we did that projected that last Friday or the 11th was the possibility when the lake would drain below the water table, but that was a model with a lot of uncertainties in it, and so it could be days from now or weeks from now.
Let's talk about some certainty that you can talk about. That's what you just witnessed, and we heard people on the ground saying they haven't heard any type of explosions like they witnessed this morning. Mm-hmm. Describe how you heard it, even hundreds of feet up over the rotor blades of the helicopter.
Right. We just flew over the area at Fissure 17, and I would like to say something about Fissure 17. Yesterday there was a fissure labeled 17, but turns out it really didn't erupt any lava, so that's off the book. So right. Initially this morning this was called 18, it's actually called 17, so just to get this straight, we're right. Fissure 17. And so we were flying over it, and it is our best estimate was about 14, the fissure itself was about 1,400 feet long, and there was very sluggish lava being erupted from it, and sporadic fountains shooting up, hurling some blobs of lava several hundred feet into the air. But most impressive that was every once in a while there would just be this big blast, and you could hear the noise of that over the sound of the rotors in the helicopter, which I've never experienced in the 20 plus years that I've been here.
Impressive then.
It was impressive, yeah.
When you said the fissure was more than 1,400 meters compared?
No, about 1,400 feet.
14.
Yeah.
No, you're talking about the flow itself, or
no,
the
actual line. The flow is really
line.
Yeah, the line that was erupting.
Well, can you, just for comparison's sake, of the first 16, what would have been the biggest leading up to, say, this one?
Well, Fissure 8 produced the largest lava flow, and it doesn't appear to me that this flow is as large as Fissure 8 yet, but it was still moving, but it was sluggish. It was slow moving, so we'll see if it continues. But it was quite active. There was a distinct line of eruption going on along the fissure.
I know you guys have been analyzing the chemical content of the lava. We talked a little bit this morning on the briefing. Any updates since this morning on yesterday's activity? in what it's telling you?
No, it takes a while. We have to get the samples, and then they have to go to the lab for analysis. So no update on that as of this afternoon. And I'm sure that we'll be trying to get samples from Fissure 17 as they can. We have 2 geologists still in the field now, and they will be flying again later this afternoon.
From a visual standpoint, did it appear to be as viscous as the previous flows? Or?
Yes. It seemed pretty viscous.
Has it created a flow?
A small flow. It's not spreading very far or very wide or very fast, but there is a distinct flow there.
Which way is it? It's going downhill, I guess.
Yeah.
South. Okay.
Yeah.
Most of the earthquake activity has moved down slope. Most of the eruptive activity has been down slope. Can you speak a little bit to what you feel is the ongoing threat upslope and to the western part of the rift, back up towards Leilani or even to 130?
Well, I think, just given, we base a lot of what we project on what's happened in the past. And so given the 1955 fissure eruption, which went up and down the rift, changing just up and down constantly, I think nothing's off the table at this point, because it could move down rift, it could go back up rift. We saw a lot of steaming all along this whole area that's been impacted. Still a lot of ground cracking and a lot of steaming going on.
Is there still steaming activity Malka of Highway 130, which was an issue about maybe 3 or 4 days ago?
We did see steaming. Sorry, I haven't flown the area in a few days, so I was a little bit disoriented up there. So I'm not sure. I hate to say with certainty about that, but we did see some steaming areas in the forest.
If I could clarify with the crater, sorry, where do you suspect the level of the lava surface is right now? I know you can't see it, but do you guys have an estimate?
Well, the last measurement that we were able to get was on May 9th. And at that time, the lava lake level was around 700 meters above sea level. And that's a pretty iffy measurement because we couldn't get a clear view to it, a completely clear view. So
how does that compare to the water table?
Again, that's another iffy measurement because we're judging it based on the nearest well, which is about a mile from the site of the summit vent. And so the water table there was about 600 meters above sea level. But again, that's a mile away from the summit vent. So that doesn't mean that the water table is exactly in that same elevation below this vent area. So there's a lot of uncertainty there, and that's one reason we really don't want to get pinned down on these numbers, because it's not precise, and there are a lot of uncertainties involved.
Janet, USGS posted some interesting Pu'uo'o videos in the last couple days.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us what we were looking at on those?
Into the crater?
Yeah.
Yes. We also flew over Pu'uo'o today, and it's quite an impressive crater. It's we've seen collapses there before, but this is a pretty ominous-looking crater. It's very deep. It's over 200 meters deep. Still fuming. Still little rock falls happening. So dust being kicked up. It's quite an impressive crater.
And was there a 3D model for that, or was that for the summit?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah. There was a 3D model for both the summit and Pu'uo'o.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, anything you want to add? Nope. I mean, just kind of a very basic question that we kind of get, and I don't know how scientifically it plays in, but everybody seems to say, well, lava's disappearing from Halemaumau. Lava's disappearing from Pu'uo'o. Where's it all going? Is this what we're seeing, or not necessarily? Could it rear its ugly head somewhere else?
Well, there's a definite connection between the summit and the East Rift Zone and all the way to the lower East Rift Zone. And so the lava that left Pu'uo'o is moving down the East Rift Zone as an intrusion, and that's our best guess of what's happening with the summit. That lava's draining away, it's entering the East Rift Zone, and it could go on out to Pu'uo'o and beyond. So it's all feeding into the East Rift Zone, and that's one of the reasons that we think that this lower East Rift Zone eruption is not over.
That intrusion yesterday, the report was that it seemed like it had stalled about where it was. Is that the same today, or is it moving further?
It seems to be. We haven't noticed any earthquake activity beyond where it's pushed to so far.
So I wasn't clear on the crater where the lava surface may meet the water table, and that the concern is that these explosions will be caused not by it reaching the water table, is that some of the water might seep into rock and then create. So why couldn't the water seep into the rock before the lava goes below?
Because if magma is occupying that column, it's so hot that the water really can't infiltrate the hot rock left behind. So you really have to vacate that conduit for water to seep into the hot rock. And so these explosions that we've been having for over the past 10 years, those have been gas-driven explosions. From rocks falling into the lava lake, the lake is very gassy, and the gases are released, and it hurls rock fragments and lava upward. This is a different thing, where the lava is going to be out of sight. Water seeps into the hot conduit that's left behind, and steam. And like I said, if there's no plug, the steam can just passively escape the conduit. But if that conduit gets plugged, the steam pressure can build, and that's then when we have these larger explosions.
And then there was some word that it possibly could erupt today, right? Earlier this week.
Right.
Anyway, so that was based on an estimate of where that lava surface would drop. And why is that changed? You still estimate the lava surface would be at a certain level today, correct? The lava surface would be below the water table?
Right.
So why did that change that it could have erupted today, so now we don't think it will?
Well, the model showed, we base our models on what we can see. And so we were basing it on how quickly the lava lake was draining, where our best estimate of the water table is, and then we modeled that. And so the model showed that it could have interfaced, it could have dropped below the water table as early as last Friday, May 11th. So that was the earliest we thought it could happen. So from this point forward, because we can no longer see the lava lake and how much it's draining, now we're watching for signs from the surface. We're looking at the deflation. We're looking visually at the crater to see if there are changes in the plume, what's coming out of it.
Okay, because there was a date, May 13 might be the day, right? Is that?
Well, actually, the model showed that May 11th would have been the first opportunity. That based on the model, based on the parameters that we have. So from May 11th on, it's all possible.
And how's the seismic activity been over the past 24, 48 hours?
At the summit?
Everywhere.
Oh, everywhere? Well, at the summit, we got a pretty good jolt this morning during our meeting. So it's still lighting up a little bit, and same on the lower east rift zone.
One more question about that 1950s magma. Has that been hot? Has that been down there churning all along under Leilani Estates? It's just so incredible to quantify that. If you could just explain, has that, and what has kept it hot? Just because it's a molten world under there?
Well, it's just like today. There was an intrusion in 1955, and then there was an eruption, but not everything was erupted out of the rift. And so there's been magma sitting in that rift. It's below the ground. It's deep below. Everything above it acts as an insulator, so it slows down heat loss, so it can remain very hot in the rift zone. And then when some new stuff from higher up on the rift, like because of what the Pu'o collapse comes down, it can sort of push, not literally, but sort of push that around and inspire it to make its way to the surface. And so that's what we're watching for. That's the reason we're doing the chemical analyses, because we want to know when we might be seeing some of the fresher, hotter magma that's coming down the rift zone. We saw this in 1997. There was a fissure eruption out on Nepal crater, and so we started collecting samples immediately. And and then when we plot all the samples, you could just see, how the composition changed over time. It was initially stuff that had been stored in the rift zone for a number of years, and then as the eruption went on, it became fresher and hotter, and you can see it compositionally.
That translates more into a Pahoehoe looking liquid form type lava?
Well, it could be. I mean, the concern is that it could produce higher fissures and more fluid lava flows, and more fluid lava flows have the potential to travel farther than these sticky flows that we've been seeing so far.
Cool. All right, Janet, thank you.
Thank you.